Welcome to the latest edition of Load of Balls, and I'm delighted to be joined by. I'll start with the left. Hey, just to make you feel good, I'll start off with you. All right, Pete McGrath Junior, Danny Hughes, Mark Fitz, and Mark Poland. There you go, Pete. Top billing tonight.
Well, yourself, John, but I would expect to be ahead of Poley and Hughesy there. I know Fitz is a good pundit, but sure, we'll move on past that.
I thought we were going to move in letters of success there. I would have said that it would have been ahead of Poley and all them old boys there, but I don't know. Definitely ahead of Poley.
Corey, you were saying earlier there before we went on there that Danny has an All-Star, but is it? Do you share it? Do you just give it a month each, or how do you do it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it in a long time. He had his tongue up so many journalists back ends. I had a vote for him someday, you know.
Well, I think I was winning matches for Down when you were fucking still walking into pubs to watch the games, for Jesus' sake.
I remember Down playing, getting beat by Wexford in 08 or 09, and Joe Brawley said, if they opened the gate in the corner, Danny Hughes would have ran out straight for the ball.
Do you know, it's a funny thing, because I actually laughed later on. Well, it wasn't too much to laugh at, but you couldn't not laugh at that, because actually one time I did get the ball over on the sideline and I did run out over the line with it. And he was fucking 100. He was bang on. Boy, fuck, I was a bad day in Crook Park, but bad day in Crook Park for everybody. Big Ambrose. Was it Big Ambrose lost his spleen that day? Was it that day?
Yeah.
Was that the final? Was it Matty Ford, Phil Ford?
That was Wexford went to a semi-final that year, actually, and they were very good. They had a young manager in, what do you call him? A young manager in there. I forget his name. He was only like in his early 30s. And he's managing Wexford, but he took them to a semi-final. Really good team. Matty Ford was unplayable at times.
Jason Ryan was the manager, I think.
That's right.
Sorry?
Jason Ryan.
That's the boy. That's the fella. Yeah. But it was a disappointing day, to say the least.
Well, you went on to bigger and better things, Danny, anyway. So thank God for that. Big articles in the Irish News and all now. Sure, it's amazing you come on to my wee show. You know what I mean? I feel privileged now.
Well, just send the check. Do you want to? I'll let you know who to make the check out of later.
Boys, I suppose we're all in good tune, because Down got off to a great victory against Fermanagh. The way Junior had them talked up there, I thought Fermanagh were All Ireland contenders, but you know, it was first half. The sort of were feeling each other out, what was going to happen. Do you think then that the introduction of the subs was the turning point, or do you think that Down realised that Fermanagh, without the likes of Ryan Jones and that, they weren't really up to much? Dan, I go to you first.
Listen, I think it was a combination of a couple of factors, but for me, the turning point was obviously Mooney's goal. When he took possession of the ball, as you've seen, beat 3 or 4 men on the outside, and as was highlighted last night, you know, in times gone by, Mooney would have had Keane would have went for it, because that's the type of player he was, and brilliantly passed it inside to Guinness, and Guinness again, maybe a season ago or 2 seasons ago, would have went for it himself. But again, you can see sort of Tally's coaching all over that, and Poley would probably tell you he loves that, working the ball in and taking it and finding the net, you know, on taking the keeper out of it. So I have to say, that was I thought that was a turning point, and Down got a great bit of confidence from it, and then they got a couple of more scores, and to be honest, then they run out comfortable winners. But I suppose, from my perspective, the boys did come in, made a great shout for starting next week. and the way the games are, you know, if somebody isn't performing, you'll not have a backdoor opportunity for boys that's coming off the bench. So they've 10 or 15 minutes to make a big impression. So I'd be very hopeful for this weekend on the back of it.
Paulie, you know, whenever you're watching the game, and are you analysing Connor's performance, and then, you know, are you hoping that he has a good game and that Down have a good game as well? You know, how do you think that, you know, the game went as a supporter for your family and as a Down supporter?
I suppose like any brother, you're always hoping that he does well, and like I think they're getting a bit of criticism for not winning team ball around the middle, but there was very little team ball around the middle yesterday. Himself and Big Johnny are two honest fellas who put in a shift for the team, and I actually thought that Connor did a decent job in Owen Donnelly, one of the supposedly best midfielders in Ulster. So he wasn't in the game at all, and he's usually the driving force behind the Fermanagh team. And look, I've played with a lot of them boys too, so I'm always looking to do well. And I thought that maybe just before the end of the first half, I could see Down starting to turn the screw a wee bit. They just seemed a wee bit more in the legs for Fermanagh. I don't know if maybe the COVID situation that Fermanagh had maybe impacted their training in the lead up to the game or whatnot, but Down just seemed to have a wee bit more in the legs, a wee bit more in the tank. And if truth being told, there probably should have been a bigger gap in the scoreline at the end of the game too, because I thought that, you know, Down sort of overplayed things a wee bit too in the second half. But look, when the game opened up, it was perfect for the likes of Ryan Johnson coming on, who would probably find more gaps then than he may have would in the first half. So look, delighted, and can see massive improvements in that team already, you know. So they're confident for Sunday again.
Boys, do you think that the obviously not playing a competitive game since spring? I think it was March time that their last game. Did they give Fermanagh too much respect, maybe Paulie, and you know that led to them then just going the point up at half time, or do you think it was a smart tactic just to play their way into the game?
I just think that there's more in the team too. There seems to be a very cautious approach in terms of, I would really love to see them go and press in the opposition team's kickouts, you know, especially when they maybe get a score from a free kick, when the players and the time to set up before the ball, you know, is put over the bar. They just seem to, once they get a score, just to sit back and get into this defensive shape and invite teams onto them, you know. I just think that there's more. I just feel there's more in them. You know, like the pace in that team's crazy. Like it really is. And maybe they did pay. Like Bristol Park's not an easy place to go to, so you can understand maybe why they were a wee bit cautious. And as you said there, like that Down team hasn't played together for how long? Like it's the first competitive game in months. Another thing you have to take into consideration too, John, is like them lads are travelling on their own the whole way across the Enniskillen. You know, no company in a car, a jeep or whatever. 2-hour trek, maybe getting out, and that probably had a wee bit to do with, you know, the slow start as well, a heavy pitch and that there. So you need. Did
they not take a bus down, Paulie? They didn't take a bus down, and there are 2 buses down.
No, as far as I'm aware, I know Connor drove in his own anyhow. I think they all maybe went in their own cars. So I could be wrong in saying that. I don't know, but I know.
No, I don't know. Just I thought logistically they would have travelled on 2 buses with, you know, isolated and all that kind of stuff. But you know, yeah, it just makes it even more impressive than when they do put in that shift. You know, not a performance, but yeah.
Hey, Fermanagh, did they disappoint you? Were you? You know, they're very, very negative tactics. Like they only had one plan, and it was to isolate Tomas Corrigan in the full 4 line and hope to God that he could do something.
Yeah, look, I mean, we said last week that if Down were defensively disciplined, Fermanagh wouldn't rack up much of a score. And I think a lot of their scores came from dead ball situations, particularly in the first 3 quarters of the game. Fermanagh did disappoint me. Having said that, I agree with Danny in that the goal was certainly the turning point. And, you know, you look at the goal, which I think was around 45, 50 minutes in. And I should add, we were all lucky to see the goal because we probably all nearly fell asleep at half time. The first half was that bad. But when Down got the goal, opened the 3-point gap, Fermanagh had the next two attacks and couldn't get a score. Down go up the field, point, gap opens to 4. Same thing, Fermanagh have another chance, miss, gap opens to 5. So all of a sudden, you see that wee bit of a clinical edge kicking in. Had Fermanagh maybe got a goal, they never looked at scoring a goal, but had they got the goal, the game could have been different. But certainly you look at that Fermanagh team and some of the young lads who came in, they tried hard, but you think of the players that they're trying to replace from Fermanagh teams over the last 3 or 4 years, and particularly defensively, you can see deficiencies there now that wouldn't have been there when the likes of Ryan McCluskey, Barry Mulroon, Damien Kelly, Niall Cassidy, Mickey Jones, Damien Kelly were all in that Fermanagh defence, big, physical, strong players who knew what county football was about. A lot of that Fermanagh team the other day, and I accept a few of them were championship debutants, but a lot of them just seemed really to be caught out by the whole thing and what championship football is. Even some of the more experienced players. I mean, it struck me in the first half how slow Fermanagh were on the ball. And I'm thinking here the likes of James McMahon and Owen Donnelly, players who would have been central to Fermanagh in the last 4 or 5 years when Fermanagh were playing their best football and driving forward with intensity and in waves and with numbers. And there was none of that on Sunday.
Well, I think you see when you're saying about style, when you look at Cork and Kerry match, when you look at what team, a division team, 3 team in Cork, they haven't set the world in light in this last number of years, as everybody knows. When you look at Down coming from Division 3 again, they're struggling through matches with a rigid enough decision, or defensive system, and when you look at how Kerry approached that game yesterday, and you're just going, why do Kerry feel the need that they have to set up like this? There seems to be a mire around playing like this. So you get your 12 or 13 or 14 lads behind the ball and you set up defensively. And that hasn't changed since McGuinness more or less changed Gaelic football and the way it's trained and the way it's coached. And I believe, like Coley, I would love to see Down come out and press the ball, because when you see 12 or 13 or 14 men behind the ball, there's no actual pressure. Marty Clark said it on his commentary as well. There's no pressure on the ball when they're knocking it about 10, 12, 13-yard passes, knocking it back and forth. I would love to see Down putting a wee bit more pressure on the ball and trying to press it a wee bit more up there. Because let's be honest, you're not going to win any type. I don't believe you're going to win any silverware. You're not going to develop as a team until you start to recreate what Dublin do, and you have to start somewhere. And if it doesn't start now, when are you going to start? So let's when we have boys to run off a bench, when you have 40 or 50 minutes in boys to really push to the very limits that they can go, they have a bit of work behind them, they have a bit of pace now. Why can we not press? I'm not, listen, Tally's a top class coach. He knows the game more than me. But simplistically, like Coley, I can't see why we can't press a wee bit more, be a wee bit more adventurous given the legs we have in the team.
Yeah. But I suppose, you see the likes of Conor Poland and coming up against Donnelly, and Donnelly not having a big impact on the game. Maybe Down don't need that 2 sweepers in defence then, that they can allow them the forwards to push up into the attack more and pressure, maybe get turnovers in the final third.
Yeah, well, Paddy Tally's got his template that he's used very successfully in the past. As much as I would like to see Down being that wee bit more adventurous in terms of likes of their pressing, that as we mentioned, it's not going to happen against Cavan. It's not going to happen this year because Paddy Tally is not going to change tack an awful lot, I don't believe. Surely the option would be there. Yeah, we've a decent spoiling sort of midfielder in place. they could go that wee bit more adventurous, but I just can't see it with Tally's track record with teams. I think it's too much to change in one game. It might spring a surprise, but I can see us setting up very, very similar against Cavan as did against Fermanagh, and there'll not be a massive sea of change in the terms of how the game's approached either.
No, it's interesting times, boys, and I suppose the standout performers for me was the half back line, the midfield, and probably Barry O'Hagan in the full or in the half forward line, but he's playing very, very deep. And I suppose, Danny, that's one of the roles that you sort of began with Down was that wing half forward role, dropping deep and then trying to get on the end of scores as well. Barry has sort of come of age now. He's trimmed right down. You can see that he's carrying no body fat whatsoever, and I suppose that's what's needed in that role.
Well, Barry Higgins really, be one of the best club forwards in the game in Down at the minute, and has played a lot of football inside for his club, and has played a lot of football so far in Down inside. And again, I suppose I had it early enough in my own inter-county career where it was inside, albeit it was a different type of football there where you could play inside. There was no sweepers, so there's that it was a lot more traditional. But I think Barry O'Hagan is probably going to see the benefits of playing now. If I was to pick a role to play in today's game, it certainly wouldn't be inside. It certainly wouldn't be anywhere near the full forward line. It would be at wing back, ideally, if not. Like Poley, there's Poley, one of the best wing forwards we've had for whatever number of years. And invariably, Poley could play now at wing half back, or me playing the wing half forward, I could invariably play at wing half back now. And, there's no real difference between wing half forward and wing half back, given that the roles. In fact, wing half back would be preferred position because you're coming onto the ball all the time. But Barry will get that wee bit of freedom out there, and if he has the lungs and the I suppose the commitment and discipline to do the tracking, to do the work, he can get 3 or 4 or 5 points a game easily in today's game because he's got very, very accurate. He's got a great shot on him. He carries great distance, and if he can continue that form going into the Cavan match, I can't see why he can't. And it's so important now as a wing forward, in my opinion, and it always has been. The fundamentals of Gaelic football haven't changed. You have to carry a scoring threat, and he certainly does because of his time inside, where he has that bit of accuracy and he's strong. So he can use this as a real springboard for himself at inter-county level. So him being out there, he'll really benefit from that position that he's been given, that wee bit of freedom. And obviously his own skill set will allow him to come off both feet and add to the down attack,
Foley, the centre half forward position, Petey was trying to get the ball into Donald O'Hare and was seeing, it just didn't come off. Do you think it was the conditions and you were saying about Brewster Park, the underfooting there?
Yeah, it looked as if himself and Caleb Doherty were sort of playing as a twin. Caleb is sort of a link man, and PD showed his quality with that through ball. He nearly got into Donald in the first half that time. Once I had finished up, I always thought that he would be the one that would come in and maybe take the 11 jersey, and it just hasn't seemed to happen for him for some reason. But to me, he's one of the best playmakers in the county. Again, as a forward, I would like to see him play a wee bit closer to the full forward line. As a centre half forward, I would always pin the game between the D and the 50.
Mm-hmm.
And when the ball wasn't coming through, you were turning on your heels in that support. But there's very little ball played in the full forwards now. And as Danny says, I actually felt sorry for Donald and Jerome yesterday, because it is one position in the field that must be a nightmare to play these days, especially in our county football.
Do you think Donald's reaction of being taken off at that time was because the game was starting to open up a wee bit, and
probably
there was opportunity to get on the ball more?
To me, playing with Donald O'Hare's movement's first class. And yesterday Down just seemed to run the ball. And when you have the pace that they do, then so be it. In the first half, when it was tight, they tried a few kick passes, then the accuracy wasn't there. And if they did kick it in, it was more or less into the corner where the boys had a amount of work to do. He had just scored the goal. And I'm sure, as any player will tell you, to be hooked straight after that, there was very, very frustrating. But look, that's just the way the modern game is now at the minute. It's a very, very difficult position in the field to play. I wouldn't envy it now, to be honest with you.
Pete, for you, what was the highlight of the match? Taken away from Anna. I know there were Down players, and it was a game that Down needed. But for you, what was the standout?
Well, the standout moment of the game was the goal, the brilliant run, the good team play, and the clever finish. Both teams kicked some very nice points at different stages in the game. The one moment though that encapsulates that game for me, I think, was the brilliant block by Paddy Murdoch in the first half, which I think was Tomas Corrigan at the shot. No, sorry, it was Declan McCusker who shot, and Paddy made a superb block. Showed real commitment, desire, put everything on the line, and that's what you need in Challenger football. Just to go back to what Poley said for a second about Down, sort of, and the congested nature, if you like, or the lateral play that we saw a lot of. A word of caution on that going forward would be that Cavan against Monaghan struggled in the first half when Monaghan went at them and played with fluidity. But in the second half, when Monaghan started to try and hold possession more and sort of work it side to side and then try and find gaps, that's when Cavan were able to grow into the game. So I do think that I would agree with the boys have been saying, is that next week Down do have to look to be that bit more direct, because Cavan will be able to cope with that slower pace of the game much better than Fermanagh proved to be able to.
It was no coincidence yesterday. Antrim cut through Cavan 2 or 3 times, so there'll be opportunities there.
Mark Fitz has said there that, and he's 100% through to Paddy. Paddy is very consistent in how he coaches a team and how he sets up a team. He's not going to try anything left field. It was interesting when we were at the Liverpool match yesterday, and Jurgen Klopp decided that he would start 4 of his best forwards, Jota, Mane, Salah and Firmino, and it was a bit of a left field decision. It had to be one or the other, but he decided to go. I don't see Paddy being like that in a personnel or a coaching perspective this weekend. It's going to be very tentative first half, and the big score is going to be a goal for either team, and then whoever gets it are going to have to, if Down are lucky enough to get it, what Down will do is then they will break and they will use the pace. They will use the pace then to try and draw Cavan into a false sense of going for broke then. But Cavan with 5 games under the belt, with a 6th game now coming up this weekend, I just think this is a fantastic opportunity for Down to go and win this game and to test. I would test this Cavan backline in the first half, given that they have been on the road 5 weeks in a row, But as Fitz said, I can't see anything left field happening here. And Paddy Murdoch, what Pete said there about Paddy Murdoch, Paddy Murdoch is a real find for Down at fullback. Poley will tell you, over the years we've had Big Dan was in there for a while, but then you lose him at midfield. Down haven't really had a real settled fullback, and it's fantastic to see him coming in there. He's centre half back and full back are 2 key positions there, and to have him there, I think is fantastic for Down at the minute.
But you see there, you're saying it's left field, like pushing up and kickouts and putting pressure on Cavan's kickouts isn't really left field.
But it's left field. It's left field for Paddy. But
you're saying there too about pressurising them on defence, and you're tempting them into short kickouts and things like that. There, like when Down get ahead of teams, like that full-on press could reap even more rewards. Do you know what I mean? Because
listen, I'm fully in agreement with you. I'm fully in agreement. I think we should be pressing at different periods. It's all right if you're under the caution, you have to take a bit of a breather. I'm total agreement that you need to press. You need to force a team down one side of the field and then really squeeze them out onto the line and squeeze them into making mistakes. I get that. And let's be honest, if they did get through Cavan, they're going to be beating one of the favourites for the All Ireland in Donegal. So Paddy will be using this game as a. There won't be, in my opinion, any massive change in tactics from what we've seen against Fermanagh. It'll be absorb the punches, rope-a-dope stuff, and then hit on the counter, hit on the break, and he'll be looking to the long play there. And
Was he a
I
coach?
just think,
Was he came in as 08 lads with Hughes, wasn't it? 08
oh
with
nine, oh
09, sorry. Did he have any say in the tactics then, or was it just coaching the tactics
oh,
that was laid out by manager?
I think he did have. There's no doubt he had an influence on selection and stuff. Probably not as much as he wanted in 09, because you had Ross and DJ there, and you had Mickey Doyle, and you had probably characters there that would have their own ideas about how they want to set up, how they want to play, and personnel, etc. So yeah, I'd say probably he didn't have to say that he wanted. And in 2010, he was going to go for the job. He was going for the job, sorry, along with Brian McGaver. And, Down, I suppose, at that time, hadn't a history of appointing outside managers. And I think James was going to need good men along with him. And it just was a perfect fit. So, yeah, and that, as players, we got that wee bit of continuity as well from a panel that had chopped and changed every 3 years, 3-4 seasons. There'd been new management, come in, and then you're throwing out the baby by the bathwater as well, and that case. So there's a wee bit of continuity from 09, and Tally had seen what he needed to see, and then obviously players coming back into form, which made it Poley there, and Marty Clark and Callum King and boys like that come in, that really added that wee bit of magic to us, So
did you have a defensive shape? Like, was it talked about whenever you lost the ball, like were you used to press, or were you used to sit in a zone, Poley, or was it, what way were you told to set up then? I know football's changed a wee bit there.
It was win the ball back as quickly as possible, basically. I think Kevy might have adopted like a sweeper role back then from maybe one of the qualifiers. He lined out at 6 and he would have been the defensive cover. But other than that there, I didn't think it was nowhere near as defensive then what it is now. And
I think, Poley, if you remember, I think we were beat by Tyrone in Casement in the semi final of Ulster. And I think that day was a bit of a watershed where I think we had decided before the game to allow Brian Dewar to go free. And I think after 15 minutes, we were flying. We were 4-5-1 up. But it kind of blew up in our face where Tyrone had that bit of experience. And then Dewar started to get a lot of influence in the game. And I think he put in a really good shift and scored 2 or 3 points then that day. And I think tactically we grew up a wee bit that day as well, even on the field, Poley, if you remember.
I was taking off at half time. That's when I won Hershey.
I didn't know that, did you? I didn't know that.
Let's see, as you said there, do you think that it works so well that Paddy Tally won't change his tactics, won't change his personnel, it'll be the same starting lineup that will come into the Cavan match? And who is going to mark McKernan, Groyd McKernan for Cavan?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be much change now. Obviously, you can speculate in that, but I generally think it will line up the same way. And even personnel-wise, if there's maybe one change, you might see possibly either Liam Kerr or Ryan Johnson come in. That might be, you can see one change in there from the start. But Groyd McKernan operated 11 against Antrim, and once he got on the ball, he had one thing in his mind, and that was to go direct towards the Antrim goal. So he's serious pace and strength carrying forward. I think he ended up with 3 points. So not going to have to only worry about Groyd McKernan, Oisin Pearson as well. Again, he got a couple of points, and he's going to have to be watched tightly. But the big lad, McKernan, big, strong, formidable. It's definitely going to have to be a man marking job. I thought maybe Jerry Collins struggled a bit with Tomas Corrigan, and then if McKernan's going to play that role, and sort of he's got that wee bit of freedom. Do you maybe put the likes, Johnny Flynn in him? Something like that. Somebody matching him physically that ways. But it's not just going to be McKiernan. There's a couple others, and as well, see Cavan off the bench, see the likes of Gallagher coming off the bench, and Thomas Edward Donahue, them boys there. So Cavan have a lot more firepower than I think people give them credit for.
Yeah, no, Pete, who do you think Down will deploy? Is it going to be Pierce Lavery, Johnny Flynn, Connor Poland, or is it going to be Kevin McKernan on a man marking job?
I think in terms of Geroid McKiernan, purely for physical size, it'll be Kevin McKernan. I think in terms of, I know Geroid has pace when he gets going, but he's maybe not the fastest off the mark, which could suit Kevin. And in terms of that old physicality and sort of just get something on the ball, disrupt his rhythm, I think McKernan would be very, very well suited to Geroid. I think inside you'll see Pierce Laverty probably looking to pick up one of the sharper corner men, because Cavan, they don't really have a standout sort of one go-to man for scores. I think the 12 different scores, for example, against Monaghan out of 215, which is quite a spread of scorers. So I think Down will have to balance out their defensive resources, but I think if you disrupt Geroid McKiernan and knock him out of his stride, you go a long way to severely disrupting what Cavan try to bring to matches. You've obviously got this success history in Cavan, because a lot of these guys now have won under 21 Ulster Championships and so on and so forth. So they'll come into the game confident. They'll be looking to get to an Ulster Senior Final, and they'll, from their perspective, will believe they can go out and beat Down. But I do think the sort of freshness that Down have, having most of the players only played one full match, could be quite telling come the last 15, 20 minutes, and that could be enough to maybe see Down over the edge in this one.
I think Johnny Flynn, for me now, Johnny Flynn would be the natural player to pick up Geroid because of his strength in the air. I think Johnny is one of the tallest players that we have and physically strong, and can really, if you can keep the ball away from McKiernan and spoil it all the time, prevent him, get players around him. I think Connor Poland, Mark will probably obviously he'll be accused of being biased, but there's Mark the other day, he puts in his tackle count would be massive. So again, he's there to maybe snuff out Gallion, and Connor offers you a wee bit going forward as well. He won a couple of frees and scoreable positions as well. So that's I suppose from a midfield perspective, I would say that Down, if you can break even at midfield, I think if you can break even at midfield in any county match, then you leave it to the forward lines and the half-backs to win the game for you. And I think with Down's bit of pace around the middle third there, they have the ability to go for it. But for me, Johnny Flynn, he's in there to do a job. And both him and Connor done a good job the other day. So I would think that Johnny Flynn would have to pick up McKiernan, Connor maybe on Gallion, and again, I think we can do a job there. And McKiernan wasn't as influential as last week against Antrim that he was the week before. These guys are 5 matches in, 5 weeks in a row, heavy field. It's bound to have an impact. Has to.
Paulie, I suppose McKernan, he doesn't play the traditional centre half forward role. It was highlighted before the Cavan like to leave that space for runners coming in. Then, it's just a man marking job and making sure then that the channel is blocked up.
When he gets the ball, he's a wee bit like Danny there. He'll only pass when he has to.
Danny didn't even pass when he had to.
I played a couple of years Railway Cup with Big McKiernan, and he probably wasn't the type of player I was used to, because going for goal was his first and maybe only option, and he had a shot from anywhere. So that's put down the need to be aware of, that when he gets the ball, that's the thing he has in his head. So if you can get a spoiler on him, or you could even double up on him as soon as he gets the ball, because I think if you can get the double up quickly, he'll cough up possession. He's very, very direct, and that is his game. He's a wonderful left foot, don't get me wrong, but I think he can be, if we're cute and we can get bodies around him as soon as he receives possession, then you will take the ball off him. But does he play centre half forward? Does he play midfield? I know he wears 11, like, but he's a big unit. He's probably a target for a lot of their kickouts as well. So look, I don't know what the break ball count was yesterday, but it didn't seem to me that Down picked up maybe a lot of it. Fermanagh seemed to pick up the scraps, So look, in these times, that's probably another key thing. So getting bodies in around him from kickouts as well as general play will be important.
Well, I suppose with the impact with the subs made, then, it just highlights the fact that how much talent there is in Down football now. I don't think that supporters and people in Down are given enough credit that there is quality players about Fitzy.
Definitely, and that was a big plus of thought for Down there yesterday. The changes, the quality of the personnel they brought on, and at the junctures they brought them on at, because Ryan Johnson for me would start near enough any other county in Ulster, and you're bringing him off the bench. You're bringing in Liam Kerr, who I know Martin McHugh in commentary was raving about Liam Kerr before the game as well. James Guinness coming in there, he's a wee bit more inter-county experience now. McCartan from Warren Point, these boys, like they're come on there to impress, because straight knockout championship, and this is their chance of really staking a claim for starting the next day out. But Corey Quinn again came on as well, so there's Down 5 real good replacements there, good solid players who the pace and the legs, that was the big thing, bringing them on at those stages, and them boys are very fit footballers, and they had big strides to run at the rear yard there per minute, and it caused them all sorts of problems. So definitely, I know the cliche and all this, it's a 20-man game and all, but it really was for Down yesterday because they used the bench so well.
With substitutions, I'm sorry to bring it back to 2010 for you, but are you in danger then that it's worked one day and that you get at the template then that this is the way it's going to go, and the subs that before the match is even embroiled? Like,
yeah, John. Listen, the work yesterday, and the players that came in definitely added. There's no doubt about that. But it mightn't even be tested against Cavan. It'll be tested against Donegal if they were to make a final at Donegal and Armagh. It'll be tested as the games go on. It's all right coming on and having 10 or 15 minutes in a game that's broken up, as well broken up, Down or leading. It's when Down or maybe behind. That's when subs can have an impact, and you see the measure of a club player. The likes of Corey Quinn and stuff is a very good, very talented wee club player and stuff like that. He's still in the early introductions of county football as well, and he's better when the game's broken up. There's no doubt that Ryan Johnson is a very talented footballer, very, very talented footballer. The question mark I would have about Ryan, and it wouldn't matter, does he have the discipline on the field? For not discipline as in, turn around hitting somebody a slap, that not type of, it's getting back into formation, giving the ball when, it's easier to take 3 toe taps or 4 top taps and run into a corner. But that, does that prevent balls moving a lot quicker into more dangerous players or into better positions? And that's the discipline Ryan will have to get used to. It's not, he's a very effective roller for Kilcoo. He carries the ball out of the fence. That doesn't operate at county level because you're playing with players of a similar ability and level, and other players that demand and want the ball a lot sooner. So those are questions that only those players will have to answer themselves when they come into a match. Can they make the right decisions? Can they carry the discipline of inter-county football? Because club football, I'll probably tell you, club football and county football are totally different. Totally different. You're operating at far different levels. So yes, they've worked today. They worked at the weekend. They might even work against Cavan, but it's against a better team. So that's the true measure of boys that are coming off the bench. But in fairness, it worked. We have to be thankful of it. But that's no guarantee for the next day.
Bordy, what impressed you then with the substitutions that come on? Will it work against Cavan, and where do you see the winning of this match?
Look, the subs yesterday did their job. I think maybe potentially Liam Kerr would probably be the one that you would potentially be starting. I heard that he went very well in training. I think he might have been caught up in COVID. He missed a couple of weeks training or something. I don't think there'll be too much change. To me, the game's just playing a lot better coming on when there's gaps appearing and he can use his athleticism and that there to get through. I would sort of agree with Danny there that when he starts, the game's tighter and he might find it hard to play his type of game. So it's probably not a good thing to be saying about somebody in terms of, you know, that sub-impact role, because nobody wants it. Where the game's going to be won and lost, if Down can replicate their second half performance, Cam Barry put another performance in like he did yesterday. The big thing to me, John, is I would love to see another 2-3 runs out of Mooney in each half, because anytime he makes a run, there's an end product. I remember talking to his daddy about it maybe last year, the year before too, and he was saying the same about he feels that there's maybe another couple of runs in Cavan, and I would love to see that too. I'm not sure what position he was playing yesterday, but again, going back to my own theory, I wouldn't have him chasing back into our cornerback, full back positions. I'd be trying to keep him in and around the midfield area and trying to get the ball to him as quickly as possible so he can break, because once he gets on the ball, he creates havoc. Like,
funny you should say that, Paulie, is a couple of times against Fermanagh had broken down the down attack, and Keelan had actually tracked on a couple of occasions and broken down the play. He got a hand in here and he got a hand in there. The most impressive stuff about Mooney, not only the goal and the run, but he kicked a point in the first half when Down needed a point. It was an excellent point. He scored a goal against Mayo last season, I think, in Uri, where he shouldered it. Keelan, I think, you know, I suppose Keelan for me has improved under Tally no end, because he's starting to make decisions and get into positions. And I suppose that's why maybe he's been made captain in the absence of Darren, who's a massive blow to Down. I think Darren O'Hagan would add so much more to us. Darren O'Hagan's a fantastic, one of the best players in Down, and has been for a number of years. But Keelan, I see a change. I definitely see a change in Keelan. And like yourself, while you don't really want him ideally chasing a corner forward, but he offers so much pace and so much cover there, even when he does, to get a hand in, and we've seen a big improvement in him. So,
but
I think
if you're in an opposition team, you want him being dragged, you want him following her. You would just run him. You would run, and I'm sure Fermanagh probably did that yesterday. They probably put somebody on him just to run him, you know, as far away
the
from
other
the
way.
Yeah. To me, people always rave about his speed. But to me, even when he came into the panel at an earlier age, he is a far more intelligent footballer than people would probably give him credit for, because they always go back to the speed. He can see a pass, the hand pass to Daniel Guinness yesterday when the goal chance sort of opened up. Just the presentation of the pass, you know, any other player, the ball could have went to ground, it could have went, you know, and took the sting out of the move. But he is a far more intelligent player than a lot of people would maybe give him credit for.
And that's one of the problems you've had as well with Straber, is where to get the best out of Mooney and where to hurt the opposition as well.
Yeah, look, the talent that Keelan has is undoubted. The athletic ability he has is beyond doubt as well. I think he is someone who I think Down have sort of puzzled over for a number of years now. I know Danny has said Paddy's got the best out of him. I would also say during the same 2 years he's at a different management at club level.
How many club games has he played? Hey,
every one that season. So look, when you have a player like that on your team, who is, I would say, almost certainly the fastest player left in the Ulster Championship. One of the most dynamic players left in the Ulster Championship. One of the most complete athletes left in the Ulster Championship. One of the best fielders of a ball left in the Ulster Championship. You know, that's a weapon in your arsenal that you want to maximise the best possible way you can. And I think you saw almost every time that Keelan got involved in the play on Sunday, something came of it. Either a shot from him, he scored, I think, 2 points. He was fouled in the first half for an easy free. There was obviously the goal. If Down can just increase the regularity of those bursts forward, then you could really be into a seriously positive situation for Down against any opposition, be that Fermanagh, Cavan, or anyone further down the line.
John or Polly, tell the boys about the time I beat Mooney in the sprint, and then he pissed off to Australia. Do you remember?
No, I remember coming into the first training session. You know what? It's quite ironic that his first training session was in Saville, because I'll never forget it. And he beat you in a sprint, and you cried away home.
And
I was in the car, and he beat the car.
Speaking of club games, Danny, that was probably the only training session in Saville you were at that year.
Good man, Pete. Good man.
We actually did a running session there on the track in St. Coleman's in my last year. And it was actually, all the oldies, all the flow coaches were at the back, but Mooney's group was in front of us. And it got to the stage where we were like, here, Mooney, give the rest of them a head start there, will you? And I swear to God, the man went round the bend. He was like the road runner. He just let somebody put a rocket in him and away he went. Like, but I hear Liam Kerr gave him a run for him.
Did he?
So I hear.
Well, we played.
Shane Johnson's quick too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, Mooney came in 2011 before he went away. He was only 18 or 19, and we played Cork. I think it was Cork. We played in Uri one day, Polly, if you remember, and he come on. He probably come on for you again, Polly, actually. But anyway, it was only a challenge match. But he went through. Honestly, he went through. He got the ball in midfield and he took off. And he went through 5 Cork fellas as if they weren't there. And I looked around and I just says to myself, "Wow, this boy is deadly, deadly quick." And it was when you seen him in flight with the ball, it was really impressive stuff. And listen, it was no surprise when he left for Australia, but certainly he's a massive asset for Down. Like,
Danny, just on his sprinting, you know, why is it he can only? Is it just his endurance? You know, is it that quick that it takes up that much energy in sprints?
That's the big question. As Polly says himself, listen, I think Keelan would know himself. I think he's somebody said he was asthmatic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether that's any reason why maybe you don't get more. But listen, it's a difficult one. Yeah, I think Keelan. There's no doubt you can get more out of him in a game. They can get more out of him on a game, and the question is, and it might be for other people to say, it's the question is, where do you play him to get the most effect of those 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 moments, or where do you get more moments out of him? Maybe he needs to take the pace back a wee bit and do it more often, in a position where at midfield where it is a wee bit looser. You don't have to be man marked at midfield. If you're centre half forward, he's going to get man marked. And the half forward and the wing back positions. I think at midfield it would probably suit him a wee bit more, whereas that wee bit of freedom. I think at midfield you've got a guy on the other side wants to kick scores, wants to dominate. Keelan doesn't have to do the aerial battle stuff. He can, I'm sure he can. He's a great leap. He can do that, but you can get that wee bit of freedom at midfield to go forward and be in the end of a move, which I think probably will suit him. But again, you will need to have somebody very disciplined, like Mark's brother and Connor, covering from us. Very, very tough gig for Connor to cover his own man and possibly another man into it at times. But, Keelan will have to, I suppose, find himself, getting more on the ball, getting those dynamic runs. But no doubt about it, Polly's right. We need to get more of those type of runs from him. And then he's a complete footballer.
Let's say you've seen the lads in around 22, 23 years of age, likes of Pierce Lavery, Daniel Guinness, they're starting to stand up now, and you don't think of them as newcomers now. They're stamping their authority on the games.
Definitely, they've a couple of years now behind them, and they're playing a good club seasons. Pierce Lavery with Saul and Daniel Guinness, obviously part of the tied up team, getting to the senior championship final, but them 2 boys that you mentioned, they've something in common. The sheer physical structure of them. Daniel Guinness and Pierce Lavery are compete physique now for senior inter-county football, and that's really brought their game on, because in terms of fitness and physicality, they're not found wanting whatsoever. Not adds confidence to your play when you go out there. But Daniel Guinness was particularly good yesterday, and Pearce went about his job as best he could in the game, was really effective. So, them boys have a long inter-county career ahead of them, and that's only positive for Down.
No, like see, Danny's was all for the disco, you see. But whenever you see these players
do you know what I have to say, John? You see some of the colour of them boys' skin. I'm beginning to question in what country were they living in during lockdown.
Hold on a second. You brought that all into the county. The Spice Boys brought that in. There's more sun and Down. I never seen the likes of it.
I would always contend that where I live here, just on the Mayo Bridge Savile border, we had about 5 to 6 hours more sunshine on a weekend. So that
only cost you about £3.60.
Paulie, you going in as a morn man. You going in as a morn man. You see there, Danny, coming out of the sunbeds. Was it Town City at that time, Danny? Was it?
There's poor old Paulie, boy. Poor old Paulie. He's jumping from umbrella and umbrella to avoid the skin. The poor fella, boy.
We used to distance ourselves, like back in the day. The Down boys used to get a bad rep around the Canal Court now because of him. And
yeah, it wasn't just me, Paulie. It wasn't just me.
Yeah, say no more.
But you know what? Do you know in those times, I have to say, I had a fantastic. I suppose I came in at 03. We came in Paddy O'Rourke's first year. Do you know the culture at that time was we trained really, really hard. We did. Anybody that came in at that time, I would contend that we trained, us young fellas, we trained as hard as anybody. And Paulie, you were in at one time as well. It was actually brilliant crack. And even in 2010 and stuff, people talk about it. But we had actually a wonderful panel of players that got on really, really extraordinarily well. And, yes, we would have had our battles in training and they all fallen out and stuff. But more than often than not, we went and had a drink after games, National League games. We had great crack when we were away on training weekends. And I think, yes, it's got all very serious. But I have to say, I'm glad I played when I did. And Paulie would probably be the same. There's some wonderful nights out and some great friends you make along the way and some really good occasions. Even after National League games, I remember a Sunday night and going on to a Monday and a Monday evening and then I was back on the training field. But they were really good occasions, You
see, Fitzy, you stopped Fitzy after 2010. That was enough for him. You put Fitzy. You boys put Fitzy off senior football.
We did.
And that never forgive James Picard. After all he did in the post, that was me done with Down. Time's a great healer though.
Champagne football, we called it.
Aye, what a year, man.
Pete, just on a final note then, predictions and how's Down going to beat Cavan?
Well, first of all, this should have been an easy question to answer because Cavan should have had around 16 suspensions. They've already had 2 Down referees. But no, how will Down beat Cavan? They'll go at them. They play, and I know we said it's unlikely they will, but they'll be as direct as possible. Continue as they were at the weekend to be clinical and to maintain that discipline defensively, both in terms of physically fouling and keeping an organisation and a shape and a structure. And if Down do that, I think they're as good as, if not a better team than Cavan, and I foresee Down winning the game by 2 points.
Let's say, you were detailed this week to be my Cavan correspondent, and you were looking at their style of play, and they're very lucky against Antrim.
I don't know. I think people are overly critical of them, especially in the first half against Antrim, and saying, this thing was thrown. They didn't look up for it. I don't know. Cavan knew they were going to beat Antrim, and they didn't have to be at full tilt. They didn't have to be in top form in terms of their performance. They done what they needed to do. Pulled away again in the second half. Now, they weren't brilliant, but job done. They've got over Antrim. That was a bloody poor Antrim team. And no disrespect, but that was a really poor Antrim team. But Cavan were just, at times, it's pedestrian for them, and they still got over the line. So I don't think they have much worry. I would worry a wee bit maybe about their discipline. I think the 3 back cards against Antrim. So they're a wee bit ropey with tagging. Paul Flynn refereed it brilliantly and he spotted a lot of things. So maybe a down do look at that in terms of Cavan's a wee bit of indiscipline in terms of the tackle. But what was Monaghan's on doing against Cavan was they kept taking the ball into the tackle against Cavan and they kept getting repelled. Down need to avoid that. I think there's definitely potential to punch holes in the Cavan defence. I'm not 100% assured about that Cavan defence. Now, Killian Clark and Kieran Brady, they're in the central positions that are good, strong footballers, but I do think that defence can be got at. And as long as Down keep it out of the tackle, they can keep it clinical, as Pete says there, and they keep that high percentage of score ratio up. Down are favourites with the bookies, I see, which surprised me, but they could just edge it. I would give a tentative nod here to Down if the majority of things go their way.
And lads, it's in Armagh, so what's it? It's notorious for being a bad pitch whenever the weather's not great. So is that going to play much havoc? And is the 5 weeks in a row with Cavan as well? Is that going to stop the legs clean out of them as well?
I actually don't think Armagh's that bad of a pitch, John. Any time I played on it, enough. We actually played a league game on it a number of years ago, and it was actually a Friday night game, one of the first ever Friday night games, and it held the weather well that night, So I don't think it'll differ too much from what it was like Sunday. But conditions, as I say, at this time of year, you just don't know what it's going to be. Like, if there's a gale of wind blowing down the field, then it makes it a 50-50 encounter. But look, I would just like to see a wee bit more intensity in different play, pressing a wee bit more. And as the boys say, like, there's definitely gaps there that can be got at, So, look, we mentioned a few lads there. Daniel Guinness, I thought, an excellent game yesterday too. Created a few scoring opportunities. If we can get them boys in the ball and get them running those holes, creating overlaps, then goal opportunities and scores will come from them, So we'll just love to see a wee bit more play, a wee bit more in Downs play, instead of just being so sort of, sitting back and go and press the ball, go and win the ball back quicker.
Mm-hmm. Danny, are we going to see anything different, or is it going to be the same cat and mouse first half, and then wait for that moment, that goal?
I think the way it's going to I think the way it's going to play out exactly like you said, it's going to be cat and mouse. It's going to be relatively rigid in terms of how they're going to set up. They're going to set up with 12, 13, 14 men behind the ball, maybe 15 at times. Armagh's been, I think it's a good field. I think it'll hold it okay. Since the stadium got redeveloped, I think it is definitely a different. It's a different surface, and I think that will be okay. Actually, I was watching during lockdown. Paulie had a great wee championship goal there at one time, so it was always athletic goals. Athletic grounds was always good for him. So you told me to plug you there on that one, Paulie. So that was a lovely goal, But no, I think Down. I would love to see them. As Paulie said, I would love to see them being a wee bit more adventurous, a wee bit earlier. But I think it's going to come down to one big moment. And if Down get that goal, then I think you'll see them opening up, because Cavan will have to go and chase the game. And I think without a doubt, the 6th game in 6 weeks for Cavan has to play a part. And if I were Down, if I were going in this game, I would ask that question a lot quicker. I would press high and I would look to punch them holes a lot sooner rather than wait to a big moment or second half. So, but I do believe that Down will win the game. I believe that they'll win the game. I believe that their tails are up. And as everybody knows here, when a Down team and their tails are up, anything could happen. So,
is the tactics? It's very hard to change tactics now. You're playing week on week. What's training going to be like? Is it just about getting boys fresh again, and then a couple of walkthroughs, or or is it 15 on 15? What's the order of the day then?
For me now, I would have said they were recovered yesterday. They would have been in the pool yesterday. They'll probably rest today, a bit of stretching, light stretching. Tuesday would be back on the field doing a bit of light work, and then Wednesday, a bit of recovery. Thursday, but very, very light. Bit of walkthrough, as you say, and then a bit. You know, the way these games are, you just won't be able to do the work. And to be fair, Down looked as if they had enough work that has been done. Paddy has said that he's very happy with the work that has been done to date. They're not going to get any gains at this stage in terms of fitness or sharpness. So it's about being ready from a mental perspective. Because you know, this game will come down to a couple of big decisions, and being disciplined right through the team, keep doing the right things at the right time. But I believe that Down Tally will have them raring to go. We'll have them well disciplined structurally, and the Cavan win against Monaghan was as much about Monaghan imploding as it was about Cavan winning. That was a game that Monaghan, you know, before. You know, Monaghan should have won that game, but tactically and structurally, the way they set themselves up to be beat, and deservedly got beat. And they paid the price for being too arrogant, and they thought they were being too clever tactically. So, listen, Cavan are there for the taking, and I think Down will take them.
Fingers crossed. You get in before the match, Danny, give a rousing speech there.
Well, Paulie was the only one that ever listened to me, and he done extremely well out of it, didn't you, Paulie?
I don't know who put me to sleep fucking quicker.
If your pre-match speeches were anything like tonight, I'm surprised the team ever got onto the field.
So we're going for 5 wins then for Down, and Fitzy's on the fence. Fitzy, you're always negative, but I swear to God.
No, I said Down are going to win.
Just about though. You didn't give
Just
me
about,
like,
yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not. There's Junior had Fermanagh for the All Ireland, and now you're sitting on the fence.
Ryan Jones didn't start.
Ryan Jones didn't start, boys. But what about poor Kerry? Isn't it sad?
Great to see.
Do you think so, Paulie?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I think that was a bad result from a Down perspective, because Kerry are one of the teams who were never able to beat Down. Mm-hmm. So that would have wiped out one of our semi-final final opponents, you know. So whenever we beat Cavan and Donegal and go the whole way.
Well, I think Cork again. I think Keane will be under massive pressure down in Kerry now. Mm-hmm. Not so much about what has went on in the past, you know, not beating Dublin, and Kerry have put it up to Dublin, and verbally could have beat them in one game their last year or the year before. But you know, I can't understand with a team that they have Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, arguably 2 of the best forwards in Ireland. You know, you have O'Brien, their class player, Murphy at the back. A couple of brilliant midfielders. You know, he'll pay the price, I would think. And Thomas O'Shea was quite.
He was, Danny, but like at the end of the day, David Moore had 2 chances in extra time. The first 15 minutes, Kerry should have been out of sight. So you can look at it that way and blame the management all you want, like, but they had chances to be 5-6 points ahead of Cork in the 15 or 20 minutes, and they didn't take them. And the conditions played a part too. And the longer Cork were in the game, the more confident they became, you know. So, look, it's just down to Kerry arrogance, you know. They think of the God-given right to go out and win games like that there too. And they probably saw themselves after the league campaign as Dublin's closest challengers too. So,
but do you know how poorly, like the no one came out and said, none of the pundits came out and said about David Moore kicking them 2 high balls. If it happened in Division 3, you would go absolutely mental. Don't know, it happened in the All Ireland final last year where he held on the ball.
Actually, we've reading the piece today too about somebody actually saying that they did the exact same in the All Ireland final last year. He had a perfect opportunity to play Shawnee O'Shea with a pass on the edge of the D. I think it was maybe the first shot he took that probably would have went over the bar and maybe sealed the game for them. So their decision making in that final third probably wasn't to the standards that you'd expect.
Well, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you're saying in a way. But the other side about it is, whether it be Jim Gavin, whether it be Desi Ford, whether it be Jurgen Klopp, the manager of a team and the coach of a team has a responsibility to have his homework done, to have his players prepared. And let's be honest, Kerry at that top. Kerry one of the contenders for the All Ireland, and did they need to set up like that? Not for me, they didn't. They don't need to set up for that. And if this is a common theme that Moran is making shots like that, surely that this would have been identified before now, and he would, there wouldn't be a common theme moving through the season. So I would. I don't know. I got the way that Thomas O'Shea was very exasperated with the way he talked. He didn't think it was acceptable. He would know a lot more from the inside in what's going on in Kerry. And for me, reading between the lines, I come to the conclusion that he was sort of laying the blame at Kerry manager's door, in my opinion.
Danny, do you know what it reminded me of? Do you remember the Down management got you to hit a free kick from the right hand side one time?
The Knights actually forced me into that. I had no problem taking that free kick. I can't say they forced me into it, but yeah, hard to forget that one. They don't talk about the 1-3 you scored before that, but anyway, let's not get into that.
Look, just on the Kerry game, I think we've spoken there about Kerry and the Kerry management, but transport ourselves into Cork's shoes for a minute, where for the last 8-9 years, since 2010, you've been the poor relation to Kerry, but you're coming in on the back of an under-17 All-Ireland, on the back of an under-20 All-Ireland, and a sort of feel-good factor in the county. You have Kerry coming to Park Queeve into Cork, so you have home advantage. The weather is something like the rain was of biblical proportions. The factors are starting to add up here. And then you say, well, hold on. For once, if we beat Kerry, they're actually gone. We won't meet them again. And all that motivation is building up there for Cork. I think Cork knew this was a sort of once in a generation opportunity for this team to beat and dispose of Kerry and to kick themselves on. And, I would caveat that as well by saying Cork won't get it all their own way against Tipperary. But
exactly.
I think the Stars,
and they could verbally find themselves out against Tipperary. That's the way Cork are.
They could, but I think on this occasion the stars aligned for Cork, and it all sort of came together for them. Kerry missed chances, Clifford, etc., etc. So well done to Cork, and it shows the beauty of this pure knockout championship.
No, exactly, and I think it was Kieran Sheehy was on Off the Ball or one of them shows, and he was saying, he predicted this. He predicted the Cork was going to win, so fair play to him. The belief, and I suppose it is down to belief, lads. This Down team as well. It's just gathering. There's a wee bit of buzz around the county as well now. You'll be talking to people, and they're saying that this could be a good year.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think in terms of other podcasts, I think there've been all sorts of technical issues on some of them this week. I think young Wooly there had a bit of an issue in one of his ones as well. So, listen, if you're getting your podcast, folks, just go to Load of Balls. That's where you get all the sense. That's where you get the proper editing.
That's the stuff, Pete. That's what I like to hear.
You get no off-record conversations on this one.
You look like you're reading that off a script, hey?
No, I've literally just received it. No, I'm not, but I just got a text through. That's why I'm glancing there at the phone here to say, poor old Eddie Brennan. He was on with Wooly, Colin Parkinson, and Parkinson forgot to turn off his microphone after it, and I think all kinds of things that were meant to be off record were saying.
I wouldn't listen to what too much what Parkinson has to say, to be honest with you.
Well, I would agree with you on that.
What?
He probably slapped you in a challenge game or something.
No, I think, and I don't even think he would get on that day.
Them Leash boys gave Danny a hard time for 1 year.
Oh, is that right? Picking you, Danny?
No, I don't know. I can't remember. I know Big Dan headbutted Clancy one day down there in the championship game, I think. And there got the ban. Well, sorry, it was one of them ghost headbutts where actually he went to headbutt him and it never landed, but he got sent off anyway. But
Billy Sheehan called Dan 1 year wonder 1 year, and I turned around.
No, that's Billy. That was Billy Sheehan. Billy Sheehan. Different fella, but Parkinson. You couldn't, Parkinson. I wouldn't listen to too much here. Didn't he leave his club to go down for big money down to one of the Dublin clubs? He did. I wouldn't. He went for a heap of money, so I wouldn't pay no heed to him.
That's like Pete going all around the country, isn't that right, Pete?
You're right, Figgy. And yourself, so.
And then, here.
That'll test your editing skills.
Here, I'm telling you now. I'm not like Polly now.
Come on, mate.
Congratulations.
That's the big one.
Paulie. Have you hung up the boots, Paulie? Is that it?
Well, I don't know yet. Let's see what the crack is. Never say never.
See, you're already into that secretive mode now. You want to stop talking to people. You're already into that mode now, you know.
He's going to get the point games on a Thursday night and then play for the Stone on a Friday night. That was the deal.
Especially around Easter. That's the plan.
Fitzy, we're going to do it then. Give me one more positivity, Fitzy.
I am an actually positive person. You're painting the wrong picture of me here. Yes, down by 1 point.
Good stuff. Stuff. Lads, thanks a million. We'll see how our predictions get on. And good luck. And we'll see if Pete Junior can come up with any more Cavan words for us. Pete, is there any poetic words for the Cavan men?
You've got me on the spot with that one, John.
You've got a week to think about it.
I'll have them all for you next week. I'll tell you what I'll do. When we're reviewing the Down Cavan game next week for you, I'll write a poem about the game.
Make it a short one, Pete. Right?
Never.
Please don't.
As long as you mention Polly in it, right? Good luck.
Deal.